Whatley. For the last 5 years that I have been at Actionable Insights, we have been collecting information through our line item request form. Anytime people in the field, contractors, are performing an activity and there's no line item for it, it makes it difficult to settle the claim. There has been one line item that has been the #1 most popular request that people have been asking for in the industry for years. That line item came in March of 2022. It's here. Whatley, what line item are we talking about? Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Price List Update Summary video series by Actionable Insights. You've got Harrison here and you've got Whatley there. Today, we are going to be talking about the March 2022 Xactimate price list. There are, let's see here, 12 new line items that have been added to the Xactimate price list in March of 2022, plus a bunch of changes to existing line items. In all of these videos and the price list update summary, we try to talk about what new line items were added to the price list, what line items changed, the line items that were already in the price list. So let's jump right into it and start talking about the new line items in the March 2022 price list. Whatley. For the last 5 years that I have been at Actionable Insights, we have been collecting information through our line item request form. Anytime people in the field, contractors, are performing an activity and there's no line item for it, it makes it difficult to settle the claim. There has been one line item that has been the #1 most popular request that people have been asking for in the industry for years. That line item came in March of 2022. It's here. Whatley, what line item are we talking about?
RFG line item, removal of additional layer of felt. Finally.
Woo! Let's jump into it. All right. Right here at the top, I've got RFG add ADD RF, additional layer of felt underlayment, remove and disposal. Why did the pricing department, why does this line item exist? I mean, this has been one of the most popular requests. Why did people want this line item? Give me some context here. Why you think it's now been added to the price list?
I think that some of the resistance towards creating this line item, I mean, the pricing department had to be aware for some time that there was a groundswell of interest around this line item. But there's this notion that I think makes sense if you're a contractor of like, does it really take a lot more labor to remove that additional layer of felt? And that's been a lot of the carrier's position and so on. And so far as I can tell, it's probably a little bit more labor. And I think the pricing department did what they are best at, which is they split the baby here and they added the line item. I think the pricing associated with it, you and I saw it on Ninjas, right? There's like, you know, the restores are generally happy that the line item exists, but they're like, hey, thanks for the $10 a square. Like this isn't going to tear the cover off for them. But that the pricing department isn't there to harm or help any particular part of the claim. They're just there to smooth out claim settlement, reduce friction. And I think they did that here and accomplished that with these two new line items.
You know, while they often Actionable, we've been training Xactimate, we've been training Matterport. We focus a lot of our curriculum and content around the interior of homes, what happens inside of homes. But the most common claim is roofing and exterior. So any kind of addition like this, where you now have a line item to charge for the additional removal of additional layers of felt on a roof, it's going to have.
It's going to hit a lot of claims. Yes. I think like 45% of claims are hail, full cycle claims with it, which comes out in like the property report that Verisk issued. By the way, that's coming out this month. The Verisk property report. Keep an eye out for that, guys. And if you attended the Elevate conference last month in person, you'll probably get an email with a free code to the property report, but it gives you great insight on what most common claims are and some trends associated with pricing, etc. But I can recall, Harrison, over the years, you know, you see hail and there's like 45% of claims. Yep. Like you said, exterior claims is some odd 55% of claims that, you know, they report on annually. So this hits a lot of claims. So nobody's getting rich off this, you know, $10 per square line item, but I think that it was a warranted addition. I'm glad to see it and probably smooth out a lot of back and forth between carriers and contractors.
Yep. The only thing I would call out here in the additional item information reminder that we always like looking at the additional item information to see what is the intent of the line item. This item should be used if additional layers need to be removed. more layers than the standard common installation practices. This item is not intended to be used for the base layer of felt already being removed with the roofing material. So
Right.
good to call out that clarity there.
It's kind of like tack strip. There's a FCC line item for removal of tack strip. And so sometimes folks, or actually for tack strip, to add additional tack strip, but that's only when you're doing like a long run in a casino where it'd be double tack strip, or around like a stairs. Often you'll have double tack strip there at the bottom of it, because tack strip is included in the carpet line items inherently, unless you need the additional. So I think it's applied much the same way.
All right. Next, like March 2022, I think is one of the best updates overall that we've seen to the price list in a while. March 2021 was the big change to drive time from 30 to 60. So apparently March is the sweet spot for
this is a big month
for pricing department to release some exciting updates.
Yeah.
Carrying out tile countertops. Over the years, another common request or feedback that we've gotten from contractors and carriers is that the tile removal line items always haven't done a great job at representing a warranted cost to remove showers, tile floors, tile countertops. And so over the last couple of months, we've seen a slew of new line items in the WTR water remediation category code around tile and tile removal, tile demo. Continuing that trend, we now have a collection of line items to tear out tile countertops. Tile countertops with bagging, after hours, Cat 3 after hours, bagging, no bagging. Every rendition, every iteration that we can think of that we've seen in the other line items that follow these kinds of WTR removals now exists. Taking a look here at the individual line item, let's look at probably what the most popular one will be. Tearing out tile countertop and bagging for disposal. Taking a look at the components, we have a CLN-R labor trade code, cleaning remediation technician. This is in the WTR category. And we've got some debris bags here as well. What is this for? Plastic bags and layer, tear out removal of the tile countertop there. So what do you think about this inclusion, this adoption, this
Can you pull up the additional line item information for one of those?
Sure.
You see anything here about a subdeck?
Yes,
excludes it, right?
Excludes.
Yeah. So to the extent the subdeck is being removed, it's warranted to invoice that for a separate line item. So do keep that in mind. This is really helpful. I think backsplash is on my mind. Well, they have it for tile, like a tile shower surround. I suppose you could just use that. The line items that came out in November of last year for removing, remember the tile curb, right? Tile wall and the flooring of a shower. So I suppose you could apply that for a backsplash of the tile, but this just really helps. Harrison, it wasn't even as much about the price. It's just that when it gets down to like program work, especially carriers, TPAs, they want to see the WTR line items run with WTR line items. They don't really want
mitigation
you mixing.
invoices.
Yeah, they don't want you mixing the TIL. And same thing goes for repair. They don't want to see the WTR in there. So this just smoothed the way for much swifter claim settlement on both sides, adopting these into WTR. So yeah, I dig these. Keep an eye out for the subdeck to the extent it's warranted.
All right. The last two new line items that were added in March of 2022 are steam shower / bath generators, 8 kilowatts, 9 to 15 kilowatts. Whatley, I am not familiar personally with a steam shower bath generator. Can you fill me in on what these things are? I thought when at least when my wife makes the water really hot, there's a lot of steam in the shower already. Yeah. So what would you use these for?
Well, I suppose at some point, some people run out of stuff to buy. You've already got the McLaren in the garage and you're like, okay, well, what next? This water heater alone is just not cutting it. So we need more steam. So ultimately you could have a steam shower generator where, it's a separate echelon plate and several nozzle, and you can turn that on when you're in the shower. I've never taken a shower and said, what this shower requires is more steam. But some people are running out of stuff to do, running out of stuff to buy, and this is America, so get after it.
It's a thing. Yep. It's great. You know what? Obviously, this was something that's coming up more in residential environments. Sounds like most likely in private client work. Yeah. So to have a line item like this just helps contractors and carriers have something to invoice for when this pops up in a claim.
I would have no idea how to charge for this, without seeing the pricing. So
it seems that's a great expensive. Point.
Yeah, but I don't know. I could have been wrong by an order of magnitude without more guidance. So yeah, this just gives you a jump off point if you're an adjuster. Okay, yeah, that seems about right. Let's throw that in
I
there.
love it. All right. Those are the 12 new line items that were added to the Xactimate price list in March of 2022. Let's now jump to the changes. There are some significant changes to line items in March of 2022. Coming here to my items tab, we'll jump down to the changes and look at left to right. So on the left side of my screen, just as a reminder, we have the February 2022 price list. These are the line items and what they looked like in February last month. And on the right side, we have the March price list with all the updated changed line items here. One of the changes that we saw is drywall texture. And really, it's not additional item changes. It's not changing the line item description. There were significant yield changes, productivity changes in this line item. On the left, you'll see dry text minus, text plus, and text MK. On the right, you see the same things. I'm going to take a look real quick at the yield here. I'm going to jump into the I for information and unit price, and I want to hit the edit button on the labor component. I'm going to do the same thing over here on dry text as well. So we're looking at apples to apples. In February, the price, the line item for drywall texture said that you could texture 255 square feet in an hour. That's what this direct yield is saying here. In a perfect environment,
Yep.
You can do 255. We've talked in our training and curriculum, that's not actually the final or net yield. That would be 148 square feet per hour based on the inefficiencies of working in a restoration environment here, which is about 41% the supporting events. So the direct yield for this drywall text line, and it went from 255 to 190 square feet per hour. And one thing we've talked about as well in our training over the years is that there's an inverse relationship between yield and price. Yield meaning productivity. So if something gets easier to do and yield goes up, then that price of that line item goes down. But what we're seeing here is that yield went down. And as a result, the price of these drywall texture line items went up. This is the San Diego price list for reference, 85 cents for dry text in February, $1.14 in March.
That's 35%.
Yeah, that's like a huge increase that we've seen in these line items, 64 cents to 80 cents, 126 to 165. So if you are out there using drywall square footage line items and you're applying drywall texture, like dry 1/2 minus ready for texture, you're ready to apply your texture.
That's what you've been training to for years, right?
Yep.
Is bias the drywall line items that exclude texture. And the reason for that primarily was never really about the yield or, its price. It says that the drywall that you're going to install, if you're going to do 100 square feet of 5/8 inch drywall, you're going to need 120 square feet of texture to feather in if you're butting it up with the just existing drywall. This wouldn't be true if you were replacing everything in the room like variable WC, then this notion doesn't apply. But I think it's generally in everyone's best interest to estimate the drywall and the texture separately.
Yeah, and to build on that, I was in St. Louis this week. I flew in last night. So, well, good morning, Seth. Welcome to the office. Let's get recording. Often what we see is that there's different drywall textures in different areas. The ceiling will have a different texture than the walls. So when you use the ready for texture line items, you have the ability to make sure that you are accurately representing the costs of different drywall textures in services throughout a home.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention is, in Montana or South Carolina, smooth skim coat texture means something very different than it means to somebody in California. So smooth skim coat California, this is like level 4, level 5 stuff. Smooth skim coat, which is really popular in high-end properties.
Policyholders holding a flashlight down the wall looking for anything.
Right. This is like hospital grade texture. No holidays. Then you go to South Carolina and you train and they're like, oh yeah, we smooth coat everything, right? And this is where it's just so difficult to be in the pricing department because you got these kind of colloquialisms. We use the same word to describe different things, and then we build differently. And so they have a skim coat that's really done. Let's just say without the same attention to detail that a level 5 would be. When you're doing level 5, you're taking your mud and then you're diluting it and you're often rolling it on with a foam roller. And then you're coming back with a sponge later, and you're knocking down that that texture down to nothing. No, the South Carolina smooth coat stuff that we were talking about, nobody's doing that level. They're just knifing that on there and calling it good. So just be aware, if you're an adjuster, like there is different, smooth skim coat can mean two totally different things on the totally opposite side of the spectrum. And this particular line item, in my view, it doesn't pay enough for a level 5 drywall independently in California, but then it's too generous for the knifed on texture that you would see maybe in South Carolina, like we've seen. So just be aware of those deficiencies, limitations associated with that line item.
Yeah, regional language, terminology, procedures are different everywhere. So thank you for that reminder. Now, those were the yield changes for March. Let's take a look at some of the additional item information changes. We saw not too long ago, I believe in January 2022, significant change to the supporting events, like with the inefficiencies of working and restoration, 60 minutes of drive time, 20 minutes of breaks, etc.
That happened in March of last year.
Yes.
That's where you saw the basket of goods, the 250 most commonly. What did I say?
Well, that specifically is the change from 30 minutes to 60 minutes of drive times, which happened a year ago. But January of this year, we saw changes to the how supporting events were described to say, hey, reminder, in the line items, there's anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes for a technician to set up, clean up their tools, sweep debris or vacuum in their immediate workspace.
Right.
And there was a lot of conversation over the years between contractors and carriers about final cleaning, because you could interpret those words as cleaning is included in the line item, or you could interpret it as my technician's cleaning his immediate workspace. In this, I have a separate final cleaning service of hiring somebody like Molly Mates to come out when we're done with all the trades.
Right.
So we saw in January 2022, this year, changes to the supporting events that now that they say here, I can pull up any old line item here that says supporting events, debris removal, floor sweeping in immediate workspace, independent of any final cleaning at the end of the job if warranted. What we're seeing here in March is changes to the existing final clean line items, CLN final R, CLN final C. So I want to pull up real quick the additional item information to kind of see exactly what changed here. You'll see in February, it said this item, CLN final R, said this item is intended to be used for final cleaning of a complete home. This has been updated to say in March, this item is intended to cover a final cleanup in the affected areas from various construction trades and activities after all trades have completed their work.
Yep.
So this is a continuation of the effort to clarify the intention of supporting events and what kind of cleaning is included in the line item versus final cleaning, which is a separate activity at the end when it's all the repair phase is complete. And ultimately, it would be up to the contractor and carrier to determine, is final cleaning warranted on this loss, not what kind of cleaning is included in the line item. So that's a more productive conversation. Generally speaking, final cleaning is required to return the property to pre-loss condition and turn it over to the homeowner. But I would rather contractors and carriers talk about if it's warranted than to disagree on what's actually in the line item or not in the line item. So at least we're getting closer and faster to claim settlement when it comes to final cleaning.
Agreed.
All right. Next, clean roof or joist system. We saw some changes to the line items here. And this has come up over the years, these clean joist line items, because there's been questions about how do you apply the square footage of these line items? Is it meant to be applied to every individual side of a roof joist, or is it meant to be applied in a kind of square footage variable like F or C or something like that?
Right.
What we have here in the additional item information, what has changed? If you come down to the note at the bottom, it used to say for cleaning all exposed faces of an open joist system. We've added some more words, like why not add words to clarify the intent?
Words.
In March, for cleaning all exposed faces of an open joist or rafter system, for example, or in other words, all 4 sides of the joist or 3 sides of the joist and sheathing when one side is covered by sheathing. For proper usage, enter the square footage of floor, ceiling area, or rafter area, not the surface area of the joists. So this may be seen as potentially carrier-centric, or at least some contractors out there have been probably trying to invoice for this side of it and then this square footage side of it.
Yeah, they've been being naughty. So line items don't work like that in Xactimate. Can't bill for the 2 inches on each side of a 2x4 or 2x6. That's not the intention. And this notion extends more broadly to like encapsulant and so on. And one thing you got to remember as a restorer, if you're like estimating you're going to encapsulate, say, an exposed, if you got all the sticks, you remove the drywall after a fire, you're going to encapsulate things. You want to keep in mind like the overages. If you bill for 100% of this room, then you can't bill for 100% WC variable for the adjacent room. It's kind of like insulation. You'd end up double dipping. So be mindful of that. There's something that jumps out to me, Harrison, as I'm looking at this. It's unclear. There's several new line items for cleaning, like with the sheathing, and there's dry ice blasting,
soda blasting, HEPA
vacuuming with the sheathing. This one's different. It's saying that this does include the sheathing, and there's not a separate one for it known to me. So that kind of deviates from a now familiar pattern. Do keep that in mind, that one's stated to include the
if I were to pull this up, by the way, just so you can see, there are 4 iterations of the cleaning joist line items plus JSTC plus. So you've got clean floor roof joist system, heavy cleaning, confined space, heavy confined space. So all 4 of these line items had the similar update to explain the intention of this line item is that you would apply it to the square footage of the area, not the total square footage of each individual joist or rafter, et cetera.
Yeah, that's interesting. That they include the sheathing with that particular line item. But all right, now the debate becomes, look at the difference in the pricing when you move to like HMR. I guess there's 2 things going on. Is you've got the trade code being updated from CLN to HMR, HMRT, but you also have the confined space component.
Yep. Yeah,
that is the great debate. Harrison, I got this call from a restorer this week of like, hey, it's a fire job, and we included HMR cleaning items. And adjuster says you've never seen that before in his whole life. It needs to be CLN. It's the ever-present debate after fire about which one is warranted. And I don't know. I think like the pricing department, Actionable doesn't need to take like a formal position, but somewhere in the middle probably resides the truth.
In so much of this industry, when it comes to claim settlement, we are not working in black and whites. We are working in the grays, and it's up to the parties involved to determine what line items represent the best or most accurate cost of what it will take to return this property to pre-loss condition. So it's hard to say it has to be this or it has to be that, because oftentimes there will be some middle ground where contractors and carriers can work together to find something that makes sense for the policyholder.
Yep, that's right.
All right. One other additional item information change to this multi-port air mover adapter. So if you've seen these, I know you've had these in your career at your full service GC shop back in the day.
Yep.
The change here is around a note that was added that just explains, hey, if you're using this WTR dry MA multi-port air mover adapter line item, and then you flank that added with an appropriate air mover line item like WTR dry, those 2 combined may cover the cost of either a single combined multi-port air mover, dry mover, or air mover unit, or the individual units attached together as seen kind of in these photos. So just very nice to have a clarification here so that contractors and carriers can be on the same page of these line items should be used together, and it may cover the cost of both the attached units and more portable units that can be attached.
Yeah, so think of that as an add for line item. You would typically need to add the snail or turbo air mover before it. But even in the additional item information, if you read it closely, they're not saying absolutely. They're saying probably.
The cost of this item added with an appropriate dry and air mover line item may also cover the cost. So that leaving it again to the estimators to essentially determine the warranted costs and make adjustments as needed. All right, lastly, we've got some miscellaneous changes here. You'll see on the left side, the labor line item for cleaning and remediation tech did not say per hour. So anytime Xact can clean up and make line items more consistent for searchability purposes, those generally are good things for the long run. So we have now cleaning remediation technician per hour in the line item description, as well as more consistency around how they've termed kilowatts and numbers. So you'll see here a space between 14.9 space kilowatt, and then on the right side, no longer that space in there, which is in line with the other line items that reference kilowatt in the line item descriptions, hopefully making this line item easier to find if you're searching for 14.9 kilowatts or like. All right, now taking a look here at the changes, we have potential items for a full home surge protector, dry fogging for mold, drywall returns for commercial windows, and possible items or items for installing fencing in cold weather or difficult areas. Kind of an add for fencing installation line item. All right.
I like it.
This was an exciting month, Whatley. We've got new remove additional layers of felt, which has been a popular request. We've gotten changes to the drywall yield line items out there. We saw tearing out tile countertops. Like, these are some of the most common requests out there for line items that should exist, and now they do. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Check us out on getinsights.org. It's the best place to always watch these videos, where you can click the line items below the video and jump to the exact point in the video where we talk about that line item. So if you want to learn more about any individual line item that's come out in the last 2 years, and we started this video series in January 2020, you can catch up on 2 years and 3 months of line items on getinsights.org.
Good luck. Hey, what are we doing in April? Aren't you and I both flying out for, what are we in Vegas?
Reno, Nevada. We're going to be in Reno speaking at the RIA conference. So if you're interested in seeing us talk about, let's see, I'm going to be up there talking about geospatial analysis and the various options out there between Matterport, DocuSketch, Sketch AR. I know you'll be there as well.
But separate. So you're doing that one solo or with Marting, and then I'm interviewing Fulton. So
Mike
hard-hitting questions for Mike Fulton, president of the Veris Property Estimating Solutions.
Nice work.
Anyhow, if you got questions for Fulton, put in the comments down below. I'll consider asking him when we're out there on stage. So that should be good. You and I divide and conquer.
All right. I love it. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. Feel free to check us out at getinsights.org and keep settling those claims out there.
Keep building.